You are not unlucky, you are afraid. Afraid to try, afraid to fail, afraid to discover that if you truly gave your all and still didn't succeed, there would be no one left to blame but yourself. This is the brutal truth that Friedrich Nietzsche revealed behind the comforting mask of bad luck. Most people prefer to believe that their lives are shaped by luck or fate because it frees them from the most terrifying responsibility of all, that of being the authors of their own existence. The idea of bad luck functions as a defense mechanism. It allows the individual to justify their stagnation without having to question their own choices. If life didn't work out, it was the universe. If nothing changed, it's because luck didn't show up. But reality, according to Nietzsche, is much more uncomfortable. What blocks your evolution is not an external force. It is your fear of taking full control. This stance is not only common, it is encouraged. We live in a culture that normalizes passivity disguised as spirituality, that glorifies waiting for signs from the universe and reinforces the idea that, if it's meant to be, it will be. Nietzsche attacked this mentality fiercely. He called it the slave morality, a way of thinking in which the individual transfers their power outside of themselves, blaming invisible forces for everything they lack the courage to face within. And this fear manifests silently every day. It's easier to say, "I've never had luck in love," than to admit that you repeat patterns with people who cannot offer you what you want. It's more comfortable to repeat "opportunities don't come" than to recognize that you ignored, refused, or sabotaged all of them out of insecurity. It's safer to hide behind the idea that life is random than to face the fact that you have deliberately avoided the responsibility of building what you say you desire. Nietzsche saw all of this clearly. For him, the person who blames bad luck has not yet understood that life is indifferent, that the universe does not conspire, either for or against. And precisely because of that, you are free. The indifference of the world is not punishment. It is possibility. You can create anything. But for that, you need to abandon the idea that you are being blocked by hidden forces. You need to accept that what most hinders you is the fear of discovering what you are truly made of. It is at this point that the Nietzschean journey begins, when you decide to stop protecting yourself with comforting narratives and start confronting reality in a raw and naked way. When you understand that bad luck is just the disguise your fear uses to keep you where you are. When you realize that living in expectation is a choice and that you can choose differently. This video is not a self-help message. It is a rupture, a call to radical responsibility. If you have the courage to continue, what comes next will not be comfortable, but it can be liberating. Because from here on, bad luck ceases to be an explanation, and the conscious creation of your life becomes the only possible path. The human mind has an extraordinary talent for protecting itself from pain, even if it means lying to itself. And one of the most recurring lies, according to Nietzsche, is the one that puts us in the role of victim. Because being a victim is, paradoxically, comfortable. There is a certain psychological security in believing that things went wrong because of factors beyond our control. When you put yourself in that role, you don't need to change, you don't need to take risks, you don't need to take responsibility. All you need to do is wait. Wait for something out there to change for you. Nietzsche was surgical in dismantling this internal structure. He understood that most people hide behind the victim role because facing the risk of being free is unbearable. Being free means that everything depends on you. It means that if you try to build the life you want and fail, there will be no excuses. There will be no luck, fate, or cosmic injustice to ease the pain. There will only be you, and the realization that you failed on your own. This is a truth that few can bear to face. And for that reason, Many prefer to silently sabotage their own chances. Unconsciously, they reject opportunities, avoid challenges, gravitate towards relationships doomed to fail, procrastinate dreams, and maintain habits that destroy them. All of this because, deep down, it is easier to deal with the predictable frustration of a mediocre life than with the terror of truly trying and confronting the abyss of real failure. The bad luck becomes the perfect excuse to continue protecting oneself from trauma that hasn't even happened yet. This emotional protection is not only internal, it is cultural. We live in a society that feeds the narrative of the victim. Social media, motivational speeches, and even certain lines of spiritual thought reinforce the idea that you are not to blame for anything, that you did the best you could, that the universe will still reward your pain. Nietzsche would see this as poison, not out of contempt for pain, but because he knew that this waiting posture anesthetizes the will to power, that vital force that drives us to creation, transformation, and overcoming ourselves. When an individual settles into this position, they not only escape responsibility, they renounce their own potential. They become harmless, a spectator of life instead of an author. And the most dangerous thing is that over time, this posture crystallizes. The person begins to truly believe that they have no choice, that their story is doomed to failure, that their identity is that of someone unlucky. And at this point, they no longer need external excuses. They have convinced themselves that it cannot be different, but it can. And Nietzsche points to this path, a path that is not easy, but is real. The first step is to understand that this narrative of victimization, no matter how comfortable it seems, is robbing you of the only thing that truly matters, the power to act. And only when you accept this uncomfortable truth does the possibility of authentic transformation begin to emerge. Because the moment you stop hiding behind stories that absolve you, you finally find yourself facing the real choice: to continue depending on external forces, or to become the agent of your own life. But for that, it is necessary to destroy another, even deeper illusion: the idea that there are enemies out there preventing you. In the next section, we will explore this trap, the myth of the external enemy, and how it keeps you imprisoned by fear, while the true battle has always been within. If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. One of the most effective mechanisms that humans have developed to avoid self-responsibility is the displacement of blame onto others. Nietzsche understood this deeply. He saw how the mind creates external ghosts to justify its own stagnation. The world is against me. People don't want to see me grow. The system is unfair. My parents sabotaged me. The government is to blame. Society limits me. The list is endless. And the longer it becomes, the further you distance yourself from the most uncomfortable truth of all. The main obstacle between you and the life you desire is yourself. This kind of thinking is part of what Nietzsche called the slave morality, a psychological system in which the individual abdicates the power of action and convinces themselves that external forces are responsible for their pain, their lack of progress, their unhappiness. It is an ancient mechanism inherited from centuries of oppression and fear, but today it disguises itself with modern narratives. Instead of God punishing, now it's the algorithm. Instead of an external demon, it's the job market, the ex-boyfriend, the boss, the country, astrology. The names change, but the psychic function remains the same: to avoid confronting one's own freedom. Because freedom, true freedom, is unbearably heavy. It demands that you acknowledge, no one is stopping me but myself. And that is a truth that many prefer to never face. That's why we create such external enemies, not because they are real, but because it is more comfortable for us to believe that there is something outside of us blocking, betraying, limiting us. The existence of an invisible oppressor justifies our inertia. It justifies our paralysis. It justifies our fear. But Nietzsche, with his brutal clarity, forces us to confront the opposite. What if there is no one stopping you? What if everything you call an obstacle is in fact a reflection of decisions you have made, consciously or unconsciously? What if you surround yourself with people who pull you down because it's safer that way? What if you choose crooked paths because the predictable failure hurts less than the success that requires change? What if the enemies you claim to face are just shadows projected to divert your attention from the only real enemy, your fear of acting? The truth is that the more you seek blame outside, the further you move away from the center of your own power. And it's not about denying that the world is unfair or that life imposes difficulties. Nietzsche never romanticized suffering, but he believed that even within chaos, the choice of how you react, how you act, is still yours. And it is precisely there that your freedom lies. The indifference of the world is not a sign of oppression, but of autonomy. The universe does not conspire against you. It simply does not conspire. And that is all you need to do something different. The pain of accepting this is real. But it is also the starting point for a more honest, stronger, more authentic existence. When you stop fighting against imaginary enemies, only an open field remains. A field where everything is possible, as long as you have the courage to take command. And it is at this point that Nietzsche's philosophy meets one of its most powerful ideas: amor fati. Love your fate. Not as resignation, but as a radical affirmation of the life you are willing to build. In the next part, we will dive into this concept and understand why it is the key to transforming fear into power. Among all of Nietzsche's provocative ideas, perhaps none is as misunderstood and at the same time as powerful as the concept of amor fati. Literally translated as love of fate, many interpret this idea as an invitation to resignation, a passive acceptance of everything that happens, including pain, loss, and failure. But this is a superficial reading. Nietzsche was not an advocate of passivity. He was, above all, a firebrand of consciousness. Amor fati is not about accepting what life imposes on you. It is about claiming everything that has happened to you as raw material for what you are yet to become. To love fate, for Nietzsche, is to radically affirm one's own existence. It is to look at every wrong choice, every failure, every wound, and say, "This is also me, and I do not want any of this to have been different." Not out of masochism, but because he understood that only those who can embrace the past without resentment are free to build the future without fear. As long as you are trapped in the desire for things to have been different, you will remain chained to a version of yourself that has no power, only regret. Amor fati is the exact opposite of victimization. Where the victim shrinks and says, "This should not have happened to me," the Nietzschean creator stands up and says, "This happened, and now I will use it." It is a kind of fierce love, a love that does not wait to be saved, does not beg for relief, does not outsource the meaning of life to God, the universe, or society. It is a love that takes everything on, pain, shame, error, failure, and transforms all of it into fuel. This is the will to power in its purest form. And here is the most challenging point. To live under the spirit of amor fati, you need to abandon the idea that you are a victim of anything. You need to set aside the guilt you project onto others, the shame you hide from yourself, and the fear of trying again. Because this love of fate is, at its core, love for your own capacity to create, to rebuild, to give meaning. It is you looking at everything that broke you, and deciding that none of it was in vain. Nietzsche believed that only when you can say yes to the totality of your life do you truly become free. And that yes requires courage. It is not the yes of someone who conforms, it is the yes of someone who chooses, of someone who creates, of someone who takes chaos and shapes it with their own hands. Amor fati is the foundation upon which you build not only the acceptance of what was, but the audacity to imagine what can be. But this audacity is only possible when one understands a fundamental truth. The universe is indifferent. It is not trying to teach you anything. It is not conspiring against or in favor of you. It simply is. And this indifference, far from being cruel, is the greatest proof that you are free. In the next part, we will explore exactly this: why the universe's indifference is not a reason for despair, but rather the most powerful of freedoms, and how this absence of imposed meaning opens up space for you to be the creator of your own significance. One of the hardest truths to accept, but also one of the most liberating, is that the universe simply does not care. It has no plans for you. It is not trying to teach you lessons. It does not conspire against or in favor of you. It does not punish, does not reward, does not organize events according to your merit or suffering. It simply is. This realization may sound cold, even desperate, especially for those who grew up believing in purpose, in cosmic justice, in synchronicities, or in some kind of predetermined destiny. But Nietzsche saw this indifference as a sublime revelation, because if nothing is written, then everything can be written. The absence of a predefined meaning is, for many, what fuels nihilism. If nothing makes sense, why do anything? But Nietzsche proposes another view, a brutal and brilliant inversion. He says, precisely because nothing makes sense, you are free to create your own. And that changes everything. Freedom is not a gift, it is a burden, because it carries with it the total responsibility for every choice, every omission, every direction your life takes. When there is no longer any external force to blame, there is nothing left but you. And that is frightening. But it is in that fear that the chance to become who you really are resides. Nietzsche looked down on the human tendency to wait for orders from the heavens. He fiercely criticized those who sought metaphysical justifications for life because he saw it as a denial of one's own creative power. When you wait for the universe to give you permission, you are implicitly saying, I do not have the courage to decide for myself. And that is why so many people live waiting for signs, for answers, for external validations. Because deciding for oneself requires strength, and most prefer security. The truth is that life owes you nothing. The world is not obligated to offer you meaning, success, or redemption. The universe does not operate on justice and does not move by merit. And the sooner you accept this, the sooner you can stop waiting and start acting. Nietzsche calls us to abandon this childish stance towards existence. He wants you to rise before chaos and say, I create. It is here that the concept of freedom transforms into power. There is no cosmic plan. Great. That means you can write your own. Nothing is guaranteed. Excellent. That means you have the right to try and fail as many times as you want. Nothing makes sense by itself. Perfect. That means the meaning of your life will be whatever you have the courage to build. And this leads us to the most important question of all. What are you building? Because if you still live saying that you have not been lucky, that things never happen for you, that the universe does not help, perhaps you are just fleeing from the most uncomfortable reality of all. You have not truly started to create yet. You still live as if you need permission. But you don't. In the next part, we will talk about what happens when you decide to stop telling stories to yourself and actually start creating your life with your own hands. We will talk about the birth of the creator, And why, according to Nietzsche, you only begin to truly live when you kill all excuses. If what you're hearing resonates with you, you'll find real value in my ebooks. Beyond the Shadow breaks down Jung's core ideas, while Dialogues with the Unconscious gives you a 30-day path to apply them in your life. Both are linked in the pinned comment. There comes a moment when there is no one left to blame. No trauma, no absent parent, no abusive boss, no ex-partner, no politician, no planetary alignment, no algorithm. Just you, just your consciousness, just the choices you made or failed to make. It is at this point that many people crumble, because the collapse of excuses means the inevitable birth of a new question. And now that there is no more story to protect me, what do I do with this freedom? Nietzsche called this moment of rupture the revaluation of values, when everything you believed about yourself and the world stops making sense, and you find yourself facing the abyss of creation. It is the moment when you realize that you can, indeed, build the life you want, but that it will require everything from you, all your responsibility, all your energy, all your pain transformed into strength, all your history now reinterpreted not as an excuse, but as the origin of your power. To reach this point, you need to kill one thing: the narrative. The story you have told about yourself until now. The one that said you can't, that you are not enough, that you were born in the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong people, that you have too many problems or too few traits. This story needs to die, because as long as it lives, you will live within it. You will use it as a shield. You will use it as a justification. You will use it as a prison. Nietzsche believed that a human being only becomes truly free when they overcome these inherited narratives, social, religious, moral, familial, and begin to create their own values. This is what he called the birth of the Übermensch, the one who does not conform to the life they were given, but decides to shape a new one with their own hands, the creator, the author of their own existence. And this has nothing to do with becoming superior to others. It has to do with becoming superior to yourself, to your past version, to your old story, to the fractured identity you carry. But to do this, you need to be willing to face a kind of pain that few can bear, the pain of truth, the pain of seeing that everything you have not achieved until today was not due to bad luck. It was due to fear, to hesitation, to omission, to sabotage. It was because, deep down, you still hoped someone would come to save you. But no one comes, and this is not a reason for despair. It is the beginning of your autonomy. When you abandon the illusion that life should be a certain way, you gain the freedom to build a life your way. You cease to be a product of the past and become an active force in the present. You kill the character and are born as the author. But beware, being the author of your own life is not magical. It is brutal. It is uncertain. It is exhausting. It is painful. But it is yours. And that is where the true dignity of existence lies. At this point in the journey, there is no more room for excuses, only for choices. And every choice you make, or avoid, will sculpt the world you live in. There is no formula, no manual, no map. There is only you, and the courage to decide. And if you have made it this far, there is one last question that needs to be asked. Are you ready to take on this power? Because in the last part of this video, we will put everything to the test. We will talk about the final choice, to remain at the mercy of chance, or to take control of your life once and for all. In the end, there are only two options. Either you take control of your life, or you continue to be a slave to stories that weren't even written by you. There is no middle ground. Either you are the author of your existence, or you live as an extra in someone else's plot, guided by external forces, dragged by circumstances, always waiting for something that never comes. And the most tragic part? Most choose this slavery, not because they want to, but because they are afraid of freedom. Nietzsche knew that freedom is frightening, because to be free is to lose the right to blame. It is to have no one to turn to anymore. It is to wake up every day knowing that, if nothing changes, the responsibility is yours. But he also knew that it is only from this point, this emptiness, this fall, this brutal helplessness, that something new is born. It is in this space that you can finally begin to create. Not as someone who reacts to the world, but as someone who shapes the world with their own will. And maybe now you are feeling exactly that, a weight, a discomfort, an unease. Because everything that has been said here forces you to look within, to confront everything you called bad luck, fate, injustice, and see that behind each of those words there may have only been fear. And now that you know this, there is no more pretending. There is no more hiding. From this moment on, every choice you make will be made with awareness. And that changes everything. You don't need to wait for luck. You don't need signs. You don't need permission. You just need to decide. There is no ideal moment. There is no security. There is no certainty. But there is the now. And the now is the only fertile ground where something can be created. If you keep waiting, you will only be cultivating regret. The final question is not, are you capable? It is, are you willing? If this video shook you, if it confronted you in a way you didn't expect, it's because it hit you exactly where it needed to. Now I want to hear from you. Comment below. I choose control. Write this as a commitment, as a milestone, as the first step. And share this video with someone who keeps saying, I'm unlucky, but whom you know has the potential for much more. And before you go, do one last thing for yourself. Watch the next video. It is important, just as important as this one, because this journey doesn't end here. It has only just begun.